Thank you all for coming today to the first Stout Student-Run Candidate Forum, the first or will hopefully be a long run of voter participation on the UW-Stout campus. This is the second year we ran our Stop Votes campaign, where we increased voter turnout by 30%, and we hope this legacy will continue far beyond many of our times here today. And my name is Dion Cannon. I'm the treasurer for Stout Students Unite. My major is professional communication and emerging media, and my second major is applied social science, concentration in history and politics, and I'm the treasurer for Stout Students Unite. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm joined by Simon Brown.
We're gonna kind of be zooming back and forth tonight just to make it easier with one computer. But my name is Simon Brown, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm also in the applied social science major. I'm the vice president of Stout Students Unite, and I'm also a on-campus lead for Vote Mob, getting students registered to vote and working on that stuff. And with this event, there's been a lot of work put into it, so I want to thank everybody who has helped out with that and everybody who's come here today. Thanks for participating, helping with democracy at Stout, since we are trying to get a lot of students more involved, which is fantastic. So for tonight, if the candidates want to introduce themselves, we have names, pronouns, position you're running for, anything else you want to say, and then why we should vote for you and why you love Wisconsin. And if we want to do that order, Patty, Clint, John, just to make sure there isn't any muddling, if you guys want to get into that.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Patty Schachner. I'm the senator currently of the 10th district, serving from Menominee all the way to Siren. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And the reason that I'm running is because I started out by winning the special election running on a platform for mental health. And now I want to expand on that and really focusing on healthcare. As the wife and mother of cancer survivors, I understand the importance of pre-existing conditions and why that coverage is so important, and why we need to make sure that that coverage is good coverage and not just minimum coverage that people can't afford. And as we look at the environment, as we look at education, with the pandemic going on right now, there is so many cracks in our system that were there before the pandemic. The pandemic has highlighted these cracks. And now as we look at today with 5,000 positive cases and look at how the pandemic is impacting Western Wisconsin, the only way we are going to be successful is if we come together and figure out how to control the virus. When we control the virus, we can figure out how to fix the economy. And we know that the poverty rates and people are increasing, hunger is increasing, education is struggling. We just have a lot of stuff to work on, and I believe we need to be honest, forthright, and truthful to all our constituents, and not tell them what we think they want to hear, but what they need to hear and how we're going to get there. So for me, honesty, integrity, and truthfulness is the most important to me. And I thank you for your support.
Thank you. Clint, if you want to go next.
Yeah, hopefully everyone can hear me. For those of you that haven't met me, my name is Clint Moses. I live right here in Menominee on the small farm in the Menominee Township with my wife Nora and our 4 daughters. In addition to doing a little bit of farming, I also own and operate a couple businesses. Primarily, Red Cedar Chiropractic is our business that we started from scratch in 2003. When I'm not operating those businesses or doing a little farming or doing some activities with my kids and my family, I've been busy serving my community. I've served anything from the Boy Scouts of America boards, nursing home boards. I actually currently serve on the Colfax Health and Rehabilitation Board. Duncan County. I'm a past president of the Menominee Rotary Club. Know a lot about the good stuff that organization does as well. And I currently serve as board clerk for the school district of Menominee area. And that's certainly been an interesting and very challenging experience given the COVID situation that's been going on as well. I first decided to run for the 29th Assembly seat because a lot of my days are spent listening to people's problems. They're not always health related. When you get one-on-one in a room with a patient, you really start to learn obviously a lot about what keeps them up at night, what types of things concern them, what bothers them. What is it that their representative maybe currently isn't doing for them, and is a representative even listening to them? So I'm a great listener. I like to listen to people's problems. I'm kind of weird that way. I got into what I do because I care about people. I care about serving people. I also am a great problem solver. So I'm always big on trying to figure out what the problem is and seeing what I can do to make it better. I care about healthy communities, affordable access, mental health, some of the stuff that Patty had actually touched on at the beginning here. I think there's a lot of things that we can come together and work on that are bipartisan. I don't think things need to be quite as polarizing as they are, especially at the national level and what we see on the news at night. So once again, I'm Clint Moses. I'm a candidate for the 29th Assembly, and I'm excited for this opportunity. It's been very rare to get out and meet people in this situation, and thank you, Stout, for having us on here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. John, if you want to go last.
Sure. Can anybody hear me? All right, cool. Thank you, Dion and Simon and Chris and everybody for putting this together. And for Clint and Patty for coming on. My name is John Calabrese. I am also running for the State Assembly in District 29. I also live in Menominee with my wife and 2 boys. And I'm a woodworker. And I think you should vote for me because I am independent, and the people will come before the party. And what I've spent the last 10 years doing sort of addictively is following the machinations of what goes on in Madison. And I see over and over again, every year, every session, the same games being played, a lot of party back and forth, a lot of press releases, a lot of nonsense. And I would love to throw a wrench in the works of all that to benefit the people. And I know that the powers that be there don't want me there, so that should tell the people that you do want me there. And I am very concerned about our local communities and all across the state of Wisconsin, and the small downtowns and the small farms. And I believe that being independent and putting the people above the party is the best way to come up with real solutions, especially in this time that we're living in. And you know, I was excited about the part of the question that said, why do you love Wisconsin? That was sent to me, so I'm going to say that part too. I grew up in New York State, and I moved to California for a while, and now I'm here, and I've been here for a decade, and this is home, and I love it more because geographically it's beautiful. Naturally, it's beautiful. And everybody who's a Wisconsinite knows that. But it's the people, and it's the people who they are not overbearing. Largely, they are not boisterous. They are calm, and they are confident, and they are proud of being Wisconsinites, and they're very welcoming too. They've been very, very welcoming to me, and we take care of each other. And Wisconsin has a great progressive history going back as long as Wisconsin has been a state. A lot of the ideas that were in the New Deal that FDR put in the New Deal came from Wisconsin. And it's a wonderful thought to be a part of that tradition and to be able to help my neighbors. And for all my neighbors to know that I wasn't born here, but to just meet me and see how passionate I am about helping them, and to put their support behind me, and to help me out in this campaign, and to help my family in this town. It's just a wonderful feeling. And that's why I love Wisconsin, and that's why I'm running. So thanks for putting this together, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. We also want to mention that Rob Staffschultz was invited to this forum tonight, but unfortunately he couldn't make it, so that's why he's not here. But moving on to the next question, we have, how are you planning to support college students now and in the future with things like debt, housing costs, and COVID relief? And if we want to keep going in the same order, just to keep things simple, if Patty wants to start with that one.
So college students, I mean, as we all know right now, healthcare is a top priority. Most of our college students are on their parents' healthcare. If the Supreme Court throws out the Affordable Care Act, we're going to have a quandary when it comes to college students. So that, as the mom of a Stout graduate, I would like to say that I know that when my daughter was there, that, you know, having the knowledge that she always had access to healthcare going to college helped make her journey through college much more palatable, because it's a lot for people to think about, whether or not you pay for healthcare or you go to school. So that's going to be a huge thing when that comes to pass after the election. So we need to watch that, and healthcare is a huge issue. When we talk about education, we know that because of everything that's going on with COVID, that our college budgets are stretched as far as they can go. And we're going to be dealing with some real serious things coming forward. And when we talk about the issues that are dealing with education, it can't be that we price education out of our students' ability to go to college. So when we look at what is the college experience look like, and how is it going to be affordable, and how are we going to make sure that students that want to go to college can go to college, we need to start with having the right people at the table. For far too long, policymakers have never really listened to the right people and having the right people at the table. We need to hear the stories of the real students, the students who, you know, worry about college debt and what this means for their future, that are also working full-time and going to college, there's a lot of different things when we look at our 21st century students. And then we have to look at how can we make the college experience a 21st century experience, and how can we do that affordable for our taxpayers. And when you think about the Wisconsin idea, it has always been that education is an investment in the future. We have one of the best university systems in the nation, and I would argue in the world. Some of the smartest people come out of Wisconsin. And we need to really focus on figuring out how we keep Wisconsin students going to Wisconsin colleges and universities, and using that as a building block for our economic future of Wisconsin, so that it doesn't matter where in Wisconsin you live, that you have access to secondary education, and then you can take that investment and bring it back to your community and help your community grow. Young people after college are not going to places that don't have broadband, that don't have good education, that don't have good health care. So if we want to see Wisconsin grow and be a safe place for our students, and really so that our college students feel valued, then we have to stop looking at education as a tax liability and start looking at education from K through college as an investment in our economic prosperity. So I think if we look at the end result in a more broader manner, that we will be able to come to the solutions that we need that are palatable for everybody, so that colleges can be affordable, and that the people that go to college stay here in Wisconsin to help us grow economically and prosperity, and for prosperity.
Thank you so much, Clint Moses. Not sure if we can hear you. I believe you're muted.
Okay, do it there. Okay.
There we
First
go.
off, I was going to say I'm glad I don't have to unmute myself there. It'd be kind of a nice feature to have for some of these presidential debates as well. So, well, first off, I'm an alumni. Actually, both my parents were Stout alumni as well. My dad was an industrial arts shop teacher. My mom was a social worker. Actually, she retired from Duncan County Human Services here after about 31 years of work. So I know the importance of having the good university system, especially UW-Stout right here in the 29th in Menominee. Also, along with that, I was a student of post-secondary education for nearly a decade. My personal goal is to try and have my doctorate student loans paid off before my oldest, who's a junior, starts college here in a couple years. So obviously, as parents of 4 daughters, my wife and I are very concerned about the affordability of college or technical school education for our kids as well. So it's one of those things, like for right now, there is a tuition freeze in place on all UW schools. So that helps. I'm a big fan of looking at things like, truth in tuition, where like chiropractic school that I went to, and then some of the other state schools in neighboring states will have a truth in tuition or a truth in tuition like promise, where basically when a student commits to a certain university, they know exactly what they're going to pay for tuition their first 4 years of school. When that next class of kids comes in, if the school has to make adjustments business-wise to increase, they're allowed to do that. But that's some of the creative thinking that I think needs to be applied. Also expanding access, grant access to groups like veterans and then marginalized populations. There's students out there right now that are maybe first-time college attenders or college graduates. Maybe their parents and grandparents didn't go. So we've got some of those programs available now, but I'd like to see that expanded into more of our population as well. And then constantly looking at the employment needs of our region, of our community. I think in general, our technical colleges do a great job doing that. I met with Chancellor Frank and then some other UW leadership a few weeks back, and I know they're very conscious of that too. Looking at, for instance, like I said, my dad, he was an industrial arts teacher. That program is the one that's kind of been shrinking. Well, some of the other new polytechnic type degrees are expanding. So looking at what our employers need in our area and adapting and responding to that. So when our kids get out of school, there's jobs there, good paying jobs for them. Beyond that, I pledge to meet with our chancellor and our leadership at Stout and our student leaders on a regular basis. I think it's important that our representatives sit down and meet with people back home, back in their districts. One of the most exciting parts of this job, if I'm honored to get it, is being the representative for college and universities for UW-Stout, my alma mater, where I went to school, grew up in the shadows of. I look forward to representing UW-Stout and the UW system. I just read a thing here in the last week. For every dollar that's invested in our UWs, in our colleges here, $24 comes back. So the other side of it is I know how valuable UW-Stout is to our local economy. Owning a business in Menominee, owning a couple businesses in Menominee that rely heavily on students. I am very grateful to have Stout in our community, and I'll do whatever I can to make this a great and welcoming place to attract new students as well. So look forward to the opportunity. Once again, I hope I earn your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And then John Calabrese.
All right. I remember when I was in high school and how that felt to be a junior and a senior when everybody was pushing you to apply for colleges and to get going on it, when I think biologically and mentally that might be the last thing you're thinking of. And so it is tough for people who are out of that situation to understand what it's like for college students. And especially now, given the pandemic, it must be extra daunting, extra stressful. And then you add on the student debt and the housing costs and the thought of what the future holds, because every idea that anybody has had about the future is sort of shifted. And so we need to keep that in mind. And I think that we take this pandemic time and look at this UW system as little spots on the map. If you look at the whole state and you see where the UW universities are everywhere, we already have the infrastructure that we need, not just for the students or just for the universities, but for the whole state. I think that the UW system has Stout as a polytechnic, and it has research schools, it has schools with hospitals, and I think that the colleges should be the drivers for how we get through this pandemic and how we turn the corner, because we have that infrastructure in place. And if we empower the students to not only let them know that we're going to help them realize their dreams and help them get through this, but sort of ask them if they'll help us. I think that would be a great way to empower them. I think all the things that Wisconsinites in general need, broadband and clean water, will obviously help retain students and also obviously help people stay inspired and courageous to come up with ideas. And then, you know, if we lived in a state or a country, and I've seen some lawmakers online recently still speaking of a surplus and a rainy day fund, when we know how much poverty has come through Menominee and come through a lot of other cities and small towns in the state, and we know how much students are struggling with debt and with housing. It seems strange that there would be talk of a surplus in this time. But what that tells me is that the money is there. We are not a state or a country that is poor. And so we need to talk about seriously, and when you look at the money that is spent in the state and the money that's thrown into campaigns and thrown at projects that are given to well-connected companies, Foxconn being the big one that sticks out, but there are several others all across the state that continue every legislative session. And we think about that money and we think about how much is actually there. And we come up with a plan and say, let's forgive some student debt. Let's just forgive it. And it wouldn't be all of it. It wouldn't be immediate, but maybe we make a graduated scale plan to forgive that debt. And what would that do to the students? That would inspire them, that would take anxiety and stress off of them. And that would also encourage them to stay in Wisconsin. And the money's there. We just have to have a will. And we have to listen to what the students want to, and listen to what they know, because they know more than us. They know more about technology. They know more about this future world that we are all going into. And so we need to listen to them and treat them not only as regular Wisconsinites, but as people who might have the solutions to all the problems that we need, and treat them as colleagues in this journey as lawmakers.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Dion.
Thank you. Just a reminder to all of our guests who's tuning in, you can write your questions in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer as many as we can during the group discussion session. Next question, we'll be switching up the rotation as well. What is your opinion on gerrymandering in Wisconsin, and what are you planning to do about it? For this one, we'll have Clint go first, Patty go next. Sorry, Clint go first, John go next, and then Patty go last for this one. So Clint, you can start.
Well, I was really looking forward to having Patty go first on all of them, just to get an answer. It gave me a good head start on it. But yeah, you know, this is one that unfortunately it's just become way too partisan. And I think honestly, both sides, if they're honest with you, will tell you the same thing. It'd be really nice. I'll tell you, as a candidate running around, I knew there was an issue with maps and they're kind of confusing and people don't know which district they're in and this and that. But it become very obvious when I'm going around getting nomination papers signed. Or people would come into our office actually and have them signed. And say in Menominee, they live in the town of Red Cedar or the town of Tanner or Sherman. And they just didn't know what district they're even in, which tells me, one, they probably don't show up and vote a lot, and two, it's confusing to a lot of people. So it'd be nice if it could just follow straight like a county line or something like that, but unfortunately it's not that simple. It's kind of like the Electoral College. Obviously it has to take into account adjustments in population and growth. In the 29th district, a good example, New Richmond has been booming quite a bit. If you haven't been up there in a while, New Richmond's got a lot of new housing development in the last 5 years, certainly in the last 10 years since this was done. I'm going to give the same answer I did the last couple times I've been asked this. WPR asked about gerrymandering. Boy, if it could be truly nonpartisan, I'd be all for it. I have no problem with it. I think it'd be a great idea to redraw the maps if we could get some agreement and nonpartisanship out of it. Some states have done it. Some have done it fairly effective. If I recall correctly, Iowa's done a pretty good job of drawing fair maps. The challenge is if we vote yes, for instance, on this particular, this go around, it's going to give Evers a lot of power to draw it. And it 10 years ago, obviously Scott Walker had a lot of control over it. So I would be all in favor of it if it's something that we could come together and come up with fair maps on. But in this case, I just don't think we're going to get a fair shake at it again. So with that, I'll pass to the next person to answer. So thanks.
Disingenuous.
John, you're up next.
There we go. Here I am. Sorry, everybody. Yes, I am in favor of fair maps, and I do fully believe that they can be drawn. And anybody who is alive and sentient and an adult who is engaged in, would be engaged in drawing maps or anything political, of course they're going to have some leanings, they're going to have some ideas, they're going to have some thoughts either way, and people could think that those thoughts are left or right, of course, but you know, there are also ways to put checks on whatever group it is that draws those maps, and there are also formulas to draw the maps. You can base those on population and geography, and it can be very scientific when we know where people are based on the census, and then we can look at the formula that is presented to the lawmakers and presented to the people to make the decisions about the maps. And I think that we need to realize that if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican, you want to hand that authority over to a body that at least pretends to be nonpartisan, but not to just let them draw them willy-nilly or just give them one shot. It needs to be agreed upon. And you have to admit, as a Democrat or a Republican, that your party would try to draw maps that are in your own favor. That's the way it goes these days. The Democrats did that in Illinois, and the Republicans did it here. There are examples all the time, but I do believe that if we really try, that we could get scientific-based, fair maps that make a lot more sense. And in Wisconsin, I mean, it's ridiculous. The Democrats got more votes in the assembly across the state, or for assembly races across the state in 2018. They got more votes, and the Republicans retained 63 seats. And I know it's not that simple. I know that a lot of the population centers are Democratic, but it shouldn't be that lopsided when they get more votes. And so we need to really work on it. We need to not just hand it over to the party that wins. We need to try and be honest about who we are as humans and as politicians, and try to make it a little more fair, little by little.
Thank you, John. Next, we have Patty.
Well, I come from St. Croix County, where we've already passed a non-binding resolution. 70% of the voters said that they believe in really having fair maps. And if you look throughout the whole state of Wisconsin, that's very consistent, that 70% of the people say they want fair maps. I am not a legislator who legislates and thinks I'm smarter than the people. If the people want fair maps, then we need to trust the people that when we come up with a process to do this, that they will be fair. I think it's real easy to talk about partisan politics, but the fact of the matter is, the only people who are afraid of fair maps are the ones who draw the unfair maps. So I say, let the people come up with their maps, and they're smart, there's data, there's ways to do it. And if we are confident in our policies, then it shouldn't matter. And really, I think that at the end of the day, that's the whole thing. Is right now, nobody trusts politicians because we don't trust the very basic thing, which is maps. When you know that people sat down in a closed room trying to figure out how they were gonna fix their maps, you lose faith in a system. So I think we're at the point where we need to gain some faith and trust and let the people decide how this goes, and have trust in them.
Thank you. This will be our final question, and then we'll move on to the group questions. What are you going to do about mental health crisis for students in the UW system as an underserved community? How are you going to address the mental health crisis in our community? And for this one, we'll start with Clint, Patty, and end with John.
All right, well, thanks for the question. Obviously, right away, my first answer would be advocate for additional funding. This is another thing I think we can get a lot of bipartisan support on. There's been a lot of work in the area of a regional mental health facility as well. There's been a lot of talk, especially during the election year for this as well. Obviously, as a chiropractor, I'm big on the prevention of musculoskeletal conditions. I'm also a big believer in that across the board when it comes to the overall health and well-being of an individual. Early intervention and prevention awareness is a big deal. It's just too costly for the individual, the family, and our communities to ignore this problem. Education and awareness. And the other thing is building a coalition with schools and the private sector. And once again, I'll repeat, the regional mental health facility would be a big one. And I do think it's something we could get behind on a bipartisan level and work on. Just too costly, has a lot of other kind of secondary effects in our communities as well. And besides, it's the right thing to do. So with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry. Next up is Patty.
So mental health is really where my wheelhouse lies. I've have 30 years of experience in pre-hospital medical care, and then also during that time how policymakers have ignored mental health in Wisconsinites. And it became really abundantly clear after 2010, quite frankly, in 2007 in St. Croix County, we had 0 suicides. And by 2011, we had 18. So we seen that there was a need for mental health. And when we talk about prevention, there was nothing out there. I mean, I talked to our policymakers. Our policymakers were not focused on mental health or the well-being. And you can tell that by how, what our society looks like. And when you're a college student, and if you've had mental health issues that have followed you from childhood to high school to college, one of the scariest things that can happen is that you are placed in a Chapter 51 hold. Now, there's lots of different things that we can do to prevent that person from being transferred to the other side of the state. You know, putting a building up so that it's cheaper for us, so that we don't have to expend as much time, is a way to do it. But that's not the best way, and it's really not the way to do it that is the most responsible to our taxpayers. What we need to do is have localized treatment, prevention with an ongoing emphasis, and that would be starting with the preschool, kindergarten, and then working all the way up, keeping healthcare and mental health care accessible for everyone and for all children, and then identify when people have trauma so that we can figure out how to get them to the best local treatments, so that by the time they get to college, that it's not a crisis. And right now, when you're a college kid, and if you may have had mental health crisis as a high school kid, and your parents were able to do things to help you through that, but as soon as you get into college, the hardest thing is really not allowing the parents to know what is going on. And there's a whole thing that goes on where kids want to have their independence, but they don't think they're going to have a mental health crisis. And that's where the Chapter 51 process really begins to have problems for not only the students, but also the system that we have. So I've written quite a bit of legislation for mental health, but one of the things I really worked on, and I want to continue to work on, is an advanced directive for mental health. And that would be a document that students fill out themselves, that if they're having a mental health crisis, instead of calling 911 first, we call the parents first. Because a mental health advance directive, most people that go off their meds or begin into the circle of psychosis, there is a system that naturally happens and a process that goes through. And a lot of times family members can talk the person down, and when they might not want you to come close to them. But when you're in college, you don't really know everybody, and that might be something that happens and really exacerbates instead of de-escalates. So I think one of the things that we really need to work on, instead of focusing on a Chapter 51 facility, that we could take that $15 million and really start looking at what are some really good programs that we could do that are locally, that are included with our colleges to help facilitate a more effective and preventative type of mental health treatment, instead of sending them off somewhere on a Chapter 51 hold and then sending them back with no resources, and then they can't be successful and then end up dropping out of college, because that's the last thing that they want. So that would be the first thing I would do, is really start working more on more mental health and advanced directives.
Thank you. Next up is John.
All right. I think first and foremost, we need to take the Medicaid expansion. It relieves a lot of county budgets, and they in turn will work into the universities that are in those counties. I think every budget cut that has happened over the last 10, 12 years, the first things to go are usually health and human services and mental health programs. And at a time like this, when it's not just opioid and meth epidemics, it's all of a sudden this huge pandemic, and it's continued racism in the places where that still stays strong. And it is a stressful time for everybody. And the reason that these numbers are spiking, I can't get down to the bottom of all of those, but we need to put more funding into those programs. We need to, after achieving and receiving and taking the Medicaid expansion, we need to push for Badger Care for All. We need to have more nursing programs at universities. We need to expand healthcare in general and tie mental health into that, and not just have it as a separate thing, because there's still a stigma to it, even though the numbers are spiking. And we need to lessen that stigma, and we need to let people know, let students know that it's not something to be ashamed of, and to let them know that the mental health facility and all the people they see that we should hire on campus who are experts in that field are there for them, and that it's a natural part of being a human being, and that there are people there to help. In terms of college budgets and budgets for workers all around and how they are segmented and taken apart, I think we need to repeal Act 10 and give power back to the workers to negotiate, because those workers know what's best for themselves, and when they can negotiate what's best for them, it trickles down to what's best for the students, and then the students can get the mental health care that they need and that they deserve. And what I mentioned earlier about the students and empowering them and asking them to not only do the work for themselves and for their families and for their future, but to say, hey, we're going to be here to support you, but could you please use your brilliance and the mental acuity that you've achieved in this time that those of us who are in our 40s and older don't really understand. Can you help us out to turn this corner? You give them an added responsibility with a ton of support behind them, and that will help. You know, I'm not a doctor, but that will help lessen the numbers when they know that there is support. And so, funding everything we can for medical assistance, everything we can to lessen the stigma, and just let them know that we're here for them and that we're all humans together.
Thank you.
All right, so we are now moving on to the chat questions. We've got quite a few, which is really exciting. So the first one is, if you were elected, what would you do to tackle the environmental issues that we're facing now? And for this one, we're gonna go John, Patty, and then Clint.
All right. Well, I think one of the best things that happened when Governor Evers was elected was just to start the ball rolling in acknowledging that we had an environmental crisis, and having the DNR be able to talk about climate change as the real thing that it is. I think we need to lessen the influence and power that that groups that have been detrimental to our environment have had over the legislature, including some CAFOs that have been supported and backed by large ag companies. And it's not to say all CAFOs are bad, it's not to say all large ag companies are bad, but we have seen it in the groundwater pollution all across the state. We have seen it in air pollution and rollbacks in air quality monitors, and we need to just put it at the forefront of our plan and recognize and realize that it is a real thing. The state, as I always come back to, has tons of money to give away in tax breaks, credits, and subsidies to well-connected companies, while the state can easily pay for groundwater and well testing for any person that has a well, not just for that person so that they don't have to pay for it, but so that we can track and see what's going on, how those wells are being contaminated, how the water is being contaminated. And maps that I've seen of the deforestation that's happening from north to south in this state, not just from logging, you know, and we need some logging, we need those industries, but just because of the natural effects of climate change and the how it's affecting the populations of all the species and animals that live up there, and the deer herd. That's very important to Wisconsin, our outdoors and our natural beauty, and we are a part of this world that is ever changing. And I think as Wisconsin has led in the past in all sorts of areas, we can lead now in finding solutions to maintain the growth that we need, keep business support going, but also realize that you know, the environment in Wisconsin and the entire world is not a infinite thing. We need to take care of it. We need to be stewards of it like we are stewards to everything else in the legislature. In fact, it's more important because no environment, without an environment, we don't have anything. And so we got to just make it a priority and go from there.
Thank you. And then I think I said Patty next.
Okay, thank you. So environmental policy is really an equity issue when you think about it, whether you're talking about corporation polluting, like the PFAS we saw in the eastern part of the state, to CAFOs from the manure that is seeping in our groundwater. You know, it's everywhere, and it happens with the people, the people who struggle the most with the ramifications of the pollution are most vulnerable, whether it's children, elderly, or those who live in poverty. So when we think about water, I already wrote one bill on water testing, and we need to really get a handle on where our pollution is and figure out how to control it, and then hold people accountable that are actually our polluters. And when you think about what is going on in our area, especially the local dairy, I mean, they had hundreds and hundreds of millions of gallons of manure that went unreported for months, and a complete area was contaminated because of it. And they had manure, they had fecal matter in their water. Anyone who does not think that they should be held accountable is not being a responsible steward of the environment. And their fine was only $20,000. And they negotiated for a bigger fine when Governor Evers came in, but it didn't do anything to really right the wrongs that had been done to all the people that lived in that area. The same thing can be said for the PFAS, the same thing can be said for lead pipes. Everything that is going on with our environment, it impacts our poorest and our most vulnerable, and we have to really, really be wise stewards of the environment. Without clean water, we can't live. It's that simple. And we have to have really smart 21st century policies on how to undo all the damage that has been done in the past 20, 30 years, so that for the next 20, 30 years, we can at least repair that damage so that our grandchildren and children and their grandchildren can enjoy the lakes, the waters, the streams the way we do. It just is really it hurts my heart when I see some of the water quality issues, especially in the Red Cedar. Some of those pictures of the river with the thick green bacteria and algae on there. It's just, that's not what I was raised in. I'm 60 years old, and I was raised in an area where we cleaned up all these messes, and it breaks my heart to know that we're back to this type of pollution in our waterways, in our lakes, streams, and rivers, and not to mention our forests that are going on. So policy to really hold polluters accountable needs to be a top priority.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to Clint.
Hey, I'm just going to start out and say I'm a little younger. John and I are the same age, actually, but I'm a little younger than Patty. And Lake Sonoma, I can remember swimming in that when I was a kid, and it actually was quite a bit cleaner than it is now. And then I remember swimming a two-man triathlon when they used to have it here in town, and it was always a bugger to try and get swimmers to want to swim in that Lake Monoman because it's green. And you know, it has not improved. It's one of those things, I think it's going to take time. I think we've moved in the right direction as far as trying to identify some of the sources locally for that. I agree that more should be done to enforce and penalize when there is, you know, a pollution or a violator out there. But I'm also big on providing incentives for responsible stewardship. You know, I'm a farmer part-time. Some would say a hobby, but I do make a little income off that, break even, pay my taxes, that type of stuff. I'm a farmer, and I also enjoy the outdoors. I own some land up in the Wilson Township, up in the 67th district, actually. So I like to get out and enjoy that as well. And I think, you know, a lot of it, we need to provide more incentives for people to correctly manage their property and be responsible with stewardships. I think people want to. I don't think they want to come out and pollute and do things that are going to ruin our environment. The FSA, the Farm Services here in Dunn County, has actually been a very valuable asset for me as a small farmer. One example, our county actually bought a no-till drill, so you can do no-till seeding, that's going to prevent erosion and runoff into our waterways and into our lakes and stuff. A lot of people don't know about that. Something that the county board, I believe, actually approved. One of the good things they've actually done as of late. Also, some of this soil conservation certifications that you can get through CVTC. I participated 2 years ago in a certification course that was actually picked up and paid for through the USDA, through a grant. And I learned a lot from it. I changed some of the practices on my little operation. I have a number of farmers that are big farmers, big dairy farmers, and they too are very concerned about the environment. I mean, obviously they don't want to destroy our environment because they make their livelihood off it. Accidents do happen. I think we need to be very cautious and regulate when it's necessary, but I think it also can be left up to the individuals. I think they're going to make good choices when they can. Fiscally responsible doesn't have to conflict with environmentally responsible. I definitely think you can have both. Another example, I'll use local here at the school district in Menominee area. We're currently posting for an energy management director. Our board anticipates that we will more than pay for that salary for that position, just in savings that that position should yield to our district in the first year. Once again, not necessarily changing everything over automatically to a completely green energy system, but moving in that direction when it's fiscally responsible, when it's something that we can do, being good stewards of our environment and also taxpayer dollars. So I definitely big supporter, farmer outdoors. I care about our environment. I care about the health of our people that live in it. I live here because of the beautiful area that we live in. So with that, let's move on to the next question. Thanks.
Could I add on to that? I would like to add that if we are going to be doing policy that gives advantages and helps pay for training and all of that to help people be better stewards of the environment, then we also should be paying for the health care for those people who were negatively impacted by the mismanagement and or accidents by folks. It seems like the people who are holding the bag are the ones who are the biggest victims, which would be the children who are drinking water with manure in it, or drinking out of lead-based pipes, or wells that have carcinogens in them from dumping grounds. That is why the Medicaid expansion is so important, because we can't just say, okay, this is what we're going to do to help from the future and not take care of the damage of the past. And that's why taking the Medicaid expansion would really help everybody.
Thank you. And then Clint, would you like to add on to that before we move into the next question?
Nope, I was good. Thank you.
Great, great. And moving forward with our next few questions, we are going to go until 8:30. So if we want to keep the answers to like below 2 minutes, I think that would be best to get as many audience questions in as we can. So I'll hand it over to Dion.
Hey. Without explicit state protections of LGBTQ plus citizens, their rights are threatened by the slant of the United States Supreme Court. What would you do to make laws that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender expression? We'll start with Patty, John, and then Clint.
I think our Constitution is pretty clear: equal justice for all. And that means we're all supposed to be looked at upon each other, no matter who we are, who we love, what our gender is, what our nationality is, what our religion is. We're all equal. The fact that we even have to go to the Supreme Court and be weary. I have lots of people in the LGBT community that I know that are married that are very fearful of what's going to happen to their family. And that is wrong. We're in the 21st century. This has been litigated, and just because you don't agree doesn't mean that it's wrong. I think you can love whoever you want to love, and I think your families can be however you make them up. That general makeup does not determine if the family center is a loving, caring family. So anything that we're doing as legislators, we need to make sure and do forward thinking and making sure that everybody is healthy, that we have good environments, that they have warm places to live. You know, our transgender population really is the population that has the most violence against them. We need to protect everybody. And the fact that we're even having this conversation is really sad, because I thought when we allowed marriage that this conversation was over. And I think I will do whatever I can to make sure that my friends in the community can love who they want to love, marry who they want to marry, and live how they want to live.
Thank you. Next, John.
Well, we hear a lot about how the states are laboratories of democracy. Well, if and when the Supreme Court and the federal government starts to descend down an avenue that is hateful and fearful and maybe fascistic in a certain way, and the makeup of the court does not coincide with the majority of the people, then the states need to, put up a wall and protect everybody in the state of Wisconsin, and we need to be loud about it, whatever that means. Whatever we got to do, whatever door we got to lay down in front of, then we protect everybody. And we got to make sure that we call it what it is, and we got to make sure that people understand what it is. We can't hide behind religion. We can't hide behind personal beliefs of hate. If they are hateful and if they hurt people, then they are hateful and they hurt people, and it will not stand. And we need to let everybody know that we stand with everybody, and we have liberty, we have freedom. And if you are not harming anybody else, then you should not be harmed. You should not have rights taken away from you. You should not be discriminated against. If your religion tells you that you should think a different way, then that's your religion, and you can think that, but you cannot discriminate against anybody, because that's not my religion, and that's not a lot of other people's religion. And so we as Wisconsinites and lawmakers, something I feel is a huge privilege of this job, and something that I really look forward to, is just the sense that I am not just acting as the voice of the people, but I'm acting as the eyes and the ears to see what's coming before they might see it, and to lay myself down to protect anybody in any marginalized community whenever that needs to happen.
Thank you, John. Next is Clint.
Well, I think we're all in agreement on this. Constitutional right for all. I am a liberty-minded conservative. I believe very much in protecting the constitutional rights of all people regardless. No questions, period. You said keep it short. That's my answer. I'd protect all. I mean, that's just not it's not called for hate in any form. So thanks.
Thank you.
Right. And then up next we have, how would you address the steep problems with poverty and wealth inequality? And for that, we'll go Clint, John, and then Patty.
Well, it certainly is a problem. You know, just last night, actually at our school board meeting, we're looking at student achievement. And one of the things that stood out the most when we looked at all the different subgroups is the gap in student achievement. The biggest one was those that come from socioeconomic challenges. They also tend to have the higher truancy rates. They're not fed. Their Maslow hierarchy of needs, that's for your psychology or education majors out there, but their needs are not being met. So it makes it much more of a challenge for them to even to compete fairly with the other students. And that just carries over. They get a bad start from the beginning. So it's one of those things we really need to focus on providing the basic essentials for those people. I also think it starts by attracting County. Menominee is not a very wealthy area. I think we need to do more to make it attractive to get businesses in here that have good jobs, good paying jobs that are going to help support, feed families, get families the start that they need and get them off the ground, basically. Not minimum wage jobs, not what I'd say sweatshop type jobs, but we need to do more to attract those businesses into an area that are going to boost our economy. I'm all about helping out our small, our medium businesses, which then trickles down and definitely helps the people that live and work and raise their families in these areas. So I'll do whatever I can to get out of the way and help those businesses locate to our area.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to John.
All right. Poverty did not drastically increase because of people doing the wrong thing. It's been a big part of what's happened in our government since the year I was born. And it is a systematic corruption that has used the people and our land and our resources. They have siphoned off our labor and our land and our resources and sent it all to the top. And in combination with that, they have demonized the poor, and they have called people lazy and thrown bootstraps at them. And government has shifted where we were back before I was born in the thriving times of the 50s, and they weren't thriving for everybody. They were also some very marginalized and communities, and there was deep racism still in the country at that point. But the tax code has shifted because the people who benefit from the tax code have been able to purchase our politicians. So we got to get money out of politics first and foremost. We are the richest country that the face of the world has ever seen, and we have a wealth disparity that has not been seen since the Gilded Age, since around the Great Depression. And it's not because people are lazy, it's systematic. And so you get money out of politics, if you get the influence on both sides that flow in from the wealthy, then everything becomes a little more fair. And we got to remember what this country is about. It's not about equality of results, it's about equality of opportunity. And we need to realize that a lot of people don't start at the same place as other people, the same starting line in that race. And we need to actually work to help those communities and not sow division. In Wisconsin, what I've seen in part in my following of the politics at the state level for 10 years is a constant demonization of Milwaukee and Madison, and they're always trying to sow division and pit the people in the rural communities against the people in those larger cities, and they do it for political gain. And when that happens, people are very hesitant to ever try to send funding there or try to help those marginalized communities. And like I said earlier about the health and human services, those are the first things that get cut. People are urged and pushed by politicians and people who have a vested interest in it to fight with their neighbor instead of getting along with their neighbor, and realize that have a little faith in their neighbor, that they're not looking for government assistance to make it a hammock instead of a safety net, as they say. They're just looking for a little bit of help because people need help. And so we need to address it as the problem that it is. The United Way has a report that with the acronym of ALICE, which means asset limited, income constrained, employed. And I totally remember that.
I'm gonna have to cut you off for time's sake. I'm super sorry, but I'm gonna have to cut you off for time's sake.
Okay.
Sorry about that, but thank you so much. We'll move on to Patty.
I think first thing we have to understand is poverty is not a choice. Far too long, my colleagues on the other side have really made it appear that poverty is a choice. We also have to look at second chances. There are a lot of people that need second chances, whether it's through previous addiction issues, whether it's mental health, whether it might be some criminal issues in their past. We have to have training and education available for people so that they have the tools to be successful. There's a reason why we have so many people in poverty. It's because we have an economy that's based on undertrained people. If we train more people and get more people educated, an educated society is a successful society. So in a state that is based on the Wisconsin idea, which is based on an educated society, you would think that the last thing that we would have going on in Wisconsin is growing poverty. But the reason we have growing poverty is because we spend way too much time writing legislation for Foxconn and not enough time writing legislation to help our people. And our people are the ones that need the help. So I think that if we can afford to give tax credits, we can afford to help our people in poverty. And when they succeed, we all succeed, and we all succeed, Wisconsin succeeds.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand it back over to Dion.
All right. Next question we have. We have had a tuition freeze for about a decade, and state funding has been cut over and over. If the candidates think UW is such a great investment, why is it being cut year after year? And so we'll start with John, Clint, and Patty.
All right. Well, it's being cut year after year because, I know that this year the funding increased a little bit, but it didn't keep up with all the cuts that happened over the last 10 or 12 years. And because it is part of our culture, it's part of the propaganda that a lot of us have ingested over all these years, that institutions of higher education are hotbeds of liberalism, and that they are corrupting the minds of our youth, and they're places that it's just for partying and things of that nature. And so we need to change that view of it, which is not easy to do for anybody or one legislative session, but that's a part of it. And the tuition freeze is something that lawmakers don't ever want to put their name on as getting rid of it, because what does that mean to people? It means my tuition's going up. But what we can do is look at the formulas and take a look at it in a real way to see what works best for all the universities and for all the students. And if the tuition needs to go up, then perhaps the state could look into programs to help with student debt and to help with student housing, and funnel the money into the places that it needs to go to keep our institutions thriving. And to do what I said in the first answer to the question about the students. And I mean, it's just, if you look at it a different way, and everything should be looked at a different way now after this pandemic, these universities are not just universities. They could be our savior to get us into the next chapter of Wisconsin with our Polytechnic here, with the university hospitals, with the research facilities that we have. And so you just got to make it a priority. And then you got to send the funding there and let people know that the universities and the students are here to help us. And so we got to help them.
Thank you, John. Next up is Clint.
Yeah, well, thanks. And I already referenced, obviously Stout is very important to our community here in Menominee. Already cited, for every dollar it's spent on our colleges and universities, roughly $24 comes back to the local economy. So, yeah, things have been tough. I mean, one of the things I think we've learned from the COVID this year is there's certain areas where maybe we can be a little bit more efficient, change some of the learning models a little bit as far as brick and mortar buildings. I'm a big supporter, obviously, of our UW system. I'm a UW graduate myself. Like I referenced, my parents, many of my family as well, so I do see the value in it. I think there could be more done with coalitions with the private sector, and obviously, like a lot of the private colleges do, building up relationships with businesses and alumni donors as well. UW-Stout has a very active foundation here as well, which they're constantly trying to grow. The more that they can grow that endowment and help student tuition costs, the better. State funding, I think, especially a year or two down the road, we're going to be looking at a very challenging state budget. 21, 22 probably is going to be more challenging. I'm not an economic forecaster, but just common sense tells me with reduced sales tax, reduced gasoline tax, our state budget's going to be a little crunched. I did learn quite a bit with my meeting with Chancellor Frank a few weeks ago, as far as looking at the Stout, for instance. That's what I can speak to because that's my experience. Stout's looking a lot at what they can do to streamline and be more efficient and attract out-of-state students as well. The UW system used to be a shining example in the U.S. as far as state college and university systems. We've definitely lost a little bit in that aspect. I know for a fact, just my relationship or my experience with patients that come through here, we treat a lot of UW-Stout employees. I know it's harder for them to get good quality professors to come and stay here. So that's something that I think definitely needs to be looked at and worked on. As far as state legislature, whatever I can do to make things easier with also being fiscally responsible, I will do that. But I see the value. I don't see it as just a cost or a weight around our ankle, so to speak. I see it as an investment in our community and investment in our state. So, like I said, I have full support. I look forward to representing the UW system as the 29th Assembly representative in the state legislature. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Patty.
So in Wisconsin, we pay more for corrections than we do for secondary education. When you have a legislature that actually allows that to happen, their focus isn't on the education of Wisconsinites or to grow our university system. When you prioritize incarceration, you get what you pay for. So as someone who's sitting on the College and Technical Colleges Committee, it makes me chuckle when I hear my colleagues on the other side talk about college because they don't support it. They don't support education. They don't support growing. They don't support the Wisconsin idea college and tuition fee freezes impact our students. We need to talk to the students, and our students are smart because they've come out of a good high school education. They're fiscally conservative. They know that they're going to look for something and get what they can afford. But when you're constantly freezing the different parts of the college experience, that's why people don't come to Wisconsin colleges. We actually have some colleges that are probably on the brink of closing, and it's because we invested more in incarceration than education. I think that we need to bring, again, the right people to the table, and legislators need to listen to the consumers, which would be the college students, on what they're willing to do to pay for their education and how we can make that process a better process so that everybody comes out a winner. I think it's horrible that the history for Wisconsin is going to be that we actually, as taxpayers, pay more for incarceration than we do for education. Our students deserve better.
Thank you. And here's Simon.
Great. So this will be our final question before we move on to closing statements. It's, can you share your thoughts and positions on the governor's mask mandate and efforts to stop it in the state's courts? And this one we'll do Patty, Clint, and then John.
So this is really, it's frustrating for me as someone who still works in public health. And every day I look at the numbers and I see how it's impacting. And I follow the mask mandate and I do the best that I can. Everyone in my family does, for multiple reasons. One reason, I don't like to catch a cold, so I certainly don't want to catch COVID. I do whatever I can to stay healthy, and then work out within the public, and it's very frustrating when you see so many people who ignore it. The truth of the matter is, if we want the economy to rebound and we want prosperity, then we have to contain the virus. The virus is out of control. It's showing in our numbers, and we are an embarrassment to the country right now. How we do this, the first step would be to, I don't know, call a session. It's been over 180 days. The Republican legislature will not work with the governor, and this lies closely, and it lies on them. When we have our own majority leaders in both the House and the Senate, or the Assembly and the Senate, both are under quarantine, that tells you that they don't take it serious. And people are dying because of it. People are literally dying because of it. We have to start taking it serious, and what's going on now by ignoring the mask mandate is not helping.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to Clint.
Okay, once again, thanks for the question. Once again, as a healthcare professional, I'm taking it seriously. I know there's been a lot of literature and pieces out there, and basically mailers out there on me and how I've ruined the state and I'm killing people with COVID, which I'm not even in office right now. This is a position I'm applying for and running for. And honestly, I take insult to it when people slam me on this as far as something where I'm killing people because I'm not taking COVID seriously. As a chiropractor, my job is to be concerned about people's health and well-being. I'm in close proximity. I'm very appreciative to have my business open. So when I'm in practice professionally, I am wearing a mask. I've got the mask on. Now, that being said, I don't think there should be a statewide blanket issued order from the governor saying that we all must wear the mask. I do think that we need to allow people personal choice. I think we live in a free country. I think we're infringing on their liberties. But also on the other side of it, as a healthcare provider, I'm taking it seriously. I do think good hygiene and covering your cough has always been a good stance, good popular stance. But I just think the liberties aspect of it, it's too dangerous. It's a slippery slope. If we start mandating masks, next we're going to be mandating vaccines that they've lost too many monkeys to count basically in the safety test of it. I think it was unrealistic to think that we were going to have a vaccine out by election day like the president had promised us. Never been done. And the other challenge, the little bit of human biology I have with a bachelor's degree, is that virus is mutating. So just as soon as we get a virus that might work for the current strain, it's probably going to change. It's also why the flu vaccine is not always the most effective. Some years it works great, other years it doesn't. But as far as the governor's statewide mandate, not a fan of it. I also think that we need to leave some local control, because what happens up here in western Wisconsin, or even a good example right now, Duncan County, we're not seeing the levels right now at the moment, knock on wood, that our neighbors to the east are. Eau Claire County the last couple of days has had very high rates. So I think we need to leave that choice up to the individuals and up to the business owners to act responsibly. I don't think it's something that needs to be a government mandate. So thanks.
Thank you, and then we'll move on to John.
If there's any reason to have government, this is a big one. This is a moment that nobody foresaw. This is a moment that nobody really knows what to do. This is a moment where we are supposed to listen to the experts who have a little bit better handle on it than rank and file lawmakers or any of our citizens who don't understand science and who don't understand a spreading virus. But what this has shown me, the thing that stands out most to me during this pandemic is it shows how partisan everything has become in this entire country. We are so divided in our legislatures that there was almost 0% chance that anybody on the other side would listen to the governor and say, you know, I've looked over your idea and I think that's a good idea. That's not how it works. He's a Democrat. There are Republican governors mask mandates and their legislatures are not up in arms against them. It's unbelievable. And what Patty said, and she repeated it twice, and I'll repeat it twice, people are dying. People are dying because of partisanship. And we need to address that, and we need to understand that now is the time. And no one's going to come together with a solution that fixes it. None of us are going to come together with a vaccine here on this call. But we need to work together, and we need to realize that, you know, the question mentioned the lawsuits. How insane is that? To go and file lawsuits instead of either coming to the legislature and working towards a solution, trying to listen to the people in the local communities and the counties to figure out what's best for people there. But they take taxpayer dollars and hire private lawyers and take every decision that they don't like politically, and they take it to court, and they look and they watch the calendar until November 3rd is coming, and they tick down the days, next day, one more day. Well, can we hold out longer and tell everybody that the Democrats are just coming to take away your liberty? And we'll see how much that'll hold out until Election Day. That's not what it's about. Governor Evers is not behind closed doors, and neither is anybody all the way up to the top talking about taking away anybody's liberty. Nobody knows what to do, but it would be a much better and quicker and easier solution if we all got together and did the jobs that we're supposed to do and try to do what's best for everybody, because it's working in other countries, and so it could work here.
Thank you all. And then we'll move on to closing comments. If we want to go John, Clint, and Patty.
Sounds good. I would just like to file a complaint about being cut off that one time. That was ridiculous.
I'm so sorry about that. Feel bad.
No, it's fine. I need to get cut off. I'll just keep going forever. I want to thank everybody at UW-Stout for putting this together, and Simon and Dion and Chris and everybody, and thanks to Clint and Patty for being here. This has really been great, and I love to do these things, and I think it's the most important thing, and I know it's not easy in this pandemic time to get people together or to get people to come on even from the comfort of their home because people are inundated with politics and people need a break on a Tuesday night. So thanks to everybody for being here too. And I just want to say that with a week left to go for us candidates, it's a whirlwind, and time doesn't make sense this year, and it feels like we've been at this forever, but it feels also like we've been at this for a minute. But here we are. We got a week left to go, and I've been going to bed these last months just assuming that I'm going to win, and that's not to try to be overconfident, but I think that you need that thought pattern in your mind to do things the right way, and also to prepare yourself to get to work. And after November 3rd, if I am fortunate enough to win, the work starts the next day, and it's going to be a relief, but it's also going to be a time to get out in the communities and to do what other people aren't supposed to do. Other people who don't do this job are looking to their representatives for support. They're looking for them to be their voice, and they're looking for somebody who's going to listen to what the people from New Richmond all the way to Menominee need, and to listen to them first and foremost. And if the Democratic Party is against that or doesn't think that any idea that the people in the 29th have is right, then I'm against the Democratic Party. And so I'm going to be independent. I'm going to work for the people, and I'm going to work full time, and I can't wait. And thanks again.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to Clint.
Hey, once again, thanks a lot for putting this on. Back in my day, I don't remember anything like this, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention when I was a college kid, but I appreciate the interest. I appreciate you inviting all of us there. Like John had said, it's been very challenging to get out. I too enjoy this stuff. I enjoy listening to people. I enjoy working for people. I started my business with absolutely nothing, scratch, from 0 clients. I've been broke at multiple income levels. Known what it's like to face student loans, to come out with a big business loan and no clients, no revenue whatsoever. I know what it's like to work 6, 7 days a week. I know what it's like to wake up at night and worry about things that are beyond my control, things that maybe the government could be doing a better job for me or getting out of my way. One of the things is I will always listen. I will always listen to all of you. Regardless of if there's an R after my name or a D after my name, I haven't changed. Many of you I've known in this community for a long time, some my entire lifetime. It's been interesting to me over recent weeks and months that as soon as I announced that I was running for this assembly seat, and you realized, oh, he's a Republican. I thought he cared about people. That was an actual comment that actually 2 different clients made to myself and my wife. Things are very, very partisan. I haven't changed, my values haven't changed. But yes, I have a title after my name. I am a Republican, but I still care about you. I care about our community. I care about our state. I'm running for this state or this state office, not for my own benefit. I am sacrificing a lot for my family, my business, my time with my children in order to make my community and this district, this state, and even this entire country a better place to live. Good people need to run for office. Good people can't always just sit on the sideline and let others represent them. My pledge to you is that if I'm elected as your 29th District Assembly rep to the State House, is that I will listen to you. I pledge to have regular office meetings throughout the district to listen, learn, and work on solutions to make life better for all of us here in our part of the state. Once again, thanks for having me on here. I wish we could have done more of these. It was fun. I look for your vote. I hope that I've earned your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then we've got Patty up last.
Hi. Well, you know, I can't believe this hour and a half is done already. I have always believed that ideas come from people and not parties. So I believe in bipartisan legislation, and I have done it. The hardest part for me was that the assembly people in my district were not supportive of me. I have one bill that I worked on with Representative Zimmerman, which I'm very proud of, which is the disability voting rights bill, but that's the only one that I have that shows that my assembly people that in the Senate district supported me as a legislator. So I personally feel that if we want representation, then we have to demand it from our representatives, no matter what the letter is behind their name. And this experience has shown me that I haven't demanded that, and I really hold myself accountable to all the people who of District 10, no matter how they voted. So my pitch to you is I show up. I'm a hard worker. I'm never going to tell you the lie, and I'm always going to ask you, what do you want to hear? Do you want to hear what you want to hear, or do you want to hear the truth? Because there's a difference, and I'm sick of politicians who tell me what they think I want to hear. I will always tell you the truth. And the next time you hear, well, all the money goes to Milwaukee and Madison, you need to ask why. And that's what I've always heard from my representatives, and you will not hear that from me. I will fight for Western Wisconsin. I will make sure that I do, and I will be very transparent about it. So when you ask, what have I done for Western Wisconsin, I can tell you. I've spent time on the caregivers task force. I am tomorrow meeting with the broadband task force. I have worked on college and technology. I have done chronic wasting legislation. I have co-authored the sexual assault bill, which my colleague and opponent did not even vote on. So I support the people, and I want you to know that with me, I always show up, and I will do the best I can to represent everybody in District 10. Thank you.
Great, thank you all so much for coming, Patty, Clint, and John, and also community, students, other people who've come to attend. I want to remind everybody, don't forget to vote on November 3rd. We always get caught up in the big race, but I think it's more important, or equally as important, to vote for our small local elections, since these are the people that are going to be representing us. So if Chris or Dion have any closing things?
Hey everyone. Just quick, a reminder that you can vote by in-person absentee up until September, wow. Up until November 1st. So this upcoming Sunday, I hope I'm right, that's the date. But this upcoming Sunday is the last day you can vote in-person absentee ballot. And then after that, you'll have to vote in person on November 3rd. And if you have an absentee ballot, you need to make sure that it's in the hands of the clerk on November 3rd by the end of the polls. It can no longer be postmarked November 3rd and arrive afterwards, as it was struck down by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So that's just a reminder to make sure that your vote will count, and whoever you may choose from these wonderful group of people, that your voice is heard. And with that, Chris, do you have anything to say? We're all good here. With that, thank you all for joining us tonight. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And I hope you all make your voices heard on November 3rd. So have a good night, everyone.